Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to this evening's council meeting. My name is Councillor Patricia McAllister and I am the Lord Mayor of Westminster. Before we begin, I would like to remind all members that we are live streaming this meeting and therefore microphones will be active when members are speaking and the cameras will be broadcasting until the meeting closes. A list of all the members who are present will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. As this will be a busy meeting, I would like to remind members to be as succinct as possible in their speeches and questions and their answers so that we can cover all the business we need to this evening. Appointment of Relief Chair. As I may need to vacate the chair during the meeting, I propose that Councillor Robert Eagleton be chosen to take the chair as necessary. May I please have a seconder for my motion? Councillor Ormsby has seconded my motion that Councillor Eagleton chairs the meeting as necessary. Unless any member objects, the motion will be deemed to be agreed. If anybody has an objection, please say so now. Thank you, Councillor Eagleton. Please join me on the dais. Thank you, Councillor Eagleton. Agenda item 2, minutes from previous meeting. Unless any member wishes to raise a point of order relating to the accuracy of the minutes, I will consider that members are content that I sign the minutes of the last meeting. Please state now if you wish to raise a point of order. Thank you. The minutes are agreed. Thank you, Stuart. Agenda item 3, Lord Mayor's communications. These are set out on the agenda. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. It is necessary to declare any interest in relation to the issues on which there will be a vote. These items were set out in the list of speakers on the order paper. Members need to declare an interest in the items selected for debate if they are speaking in that debate. All members in attendance were asked to identify in advance of the meeting if they have an interest to declare. I understand Councillor Glenn has an interest to declare. Can I ask him to do that now, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm going to be speaking tonight in respect to the Environment motion, and I should declare that I'm a trustee of the Westminster Tree Trust, since that is mentioned in the motion. It's not a pecuniary interest, it's unpaid. Yeah,
absolutely, but it's an interest. Thank you for that, Councillor Glenn. If anyone has any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other significant interests to declare, please do so now. Agenda item 5. There is no statement on urgent matters. Agenda item 6. Councillor presented petitions and deputations. All councillors were asked to notify in advance of the meeting if they have a petition they wish to present. I am not aware of any petitions. However, if anyone has any petition they would like to present, please mention this now. Thank you. Agenda item 7, public participation. Each member of the public selected for this item and here this evening has submitted a question which they will present to the relevant cabinet member. Each member of the public will have up to 2 minutes to present their question or petition, and then the relevant cabinet member will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Can I ask that when you're presenting your question, you adhere to the question you submitted, which you have a copy of? Can I also ask the Cabinet members who are responding to be as succinct in their responses? There will be no right of reply, and I ask that once you have received your response, you return to your seat. All questions asked and responses provided will be made available on the Council website in the days after the meeting. Can I now ask Tom Carlow to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, councillors. I'm Tom Carlo, I'm a resident in Marylebone. My question is, if parking of dockless hire bikes is a concern, why are we not converting more car parking spaces into additional parking zones for them and other bikes? One transit mode is clearly growing while the other is flat to down. Would it make sense to reallocate unused parking to reflect usage patterns? Thank you.
Thank you. I now ask Councillor Paul de Moldenberg to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Tom, for your question. We aim to do exactly as you ask. The Council is in the process of providing around 220 designated bays for rental dockless e-bikes and e-scooter parking across Westminster. A further 100+ virtual bay locations around underused cycle stands will also be provided. These locations are where there is less than a 35% occupancy, as revealed by the recent cycle parking occupancy survey. Implementation of the first phase in central areas of the city is underway as we speak and will be in operation in 2 weeks' time. There are currently around 3,000 e-bikes in operation in Westminster, and this scheme will be one of the densest in London in terms of parking coverage. It will provide residents and visitors easy access to dockless e-bike hire, encourage active travel, and promote responsible e-bike usage. Using geofencing technology, all e-bike parking bays will be monitored by the operators to ensure that any bikes parked outside of dedicated bays are identified and removed. And working in collaboration with the 3 current bike operators and 2 further e-scooter operators, I'm pleased to say the Council has been able to deliver this scheme on an entirely cost-neutral basis. So in the initial rollout, there will be an e-bike parking bay within a 5-minute walk from every household in Westminster. And we will look to expand the network in the future where there's a clear demand for further parking for e-bikes to be provided. Finally, we will continue to work with colleagues at Transport for London, London councils and other local authorities to lobby the government for appropriate legislation that enables the regulation of dockless e-bikes across London. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor de Moldenberg, and thank you, Mr Carlow, for your question and for attending this evening. Now on to question 2. The next question is from Ms Nora El-Saki Mohammed. Ms Mohammed is with us tonight, but has asked that I read her question out on her behalf. My name is Nora El-Saki Mohammed, and I have been living at the Palace Court Hotel for almost 3 years. I would like to ask you why people on the homeless waiting list for housing with mobility Category 3 who can prove that they need additional space for other reasons that may require them to need a little more space than a studio can offer cannot also bid for a 1-bedroom property. Currently, the only people who can access 1-bedroom properties on the homeless waiting list are those who are in wheelchairs, use walking sticks, or have 24/7 assistance. There are many other disabilities and needs that vary from person to person, apart from solely as mentioned. As you can see with my case, there are people in mobility Category 3 who also need additional space due to health problems and or for work, apart from those who are currently allowed to bid for one-bedroom properties. I will now ask Councillor Lisa Begum to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Nora, thank you for taking the time to come here and ask your question. I'm sorry that you have had such a terrible experience. You are right when you say that not all disabilities are visible, and your question is a timely one because we are currently working on a review of the existing allocations policy. As things stand, any household in Westminster can apply to the council as homeless and, depending on their particular circumstances, be accepted onto the waiting list for social housing as homeless and continue to live in their current accommodation. Households can then bid for available social housing properties, the size of the property being based on their current requirement. For single-person households, this is often a studio property. However, if in individual cases there are particular needs that require a larger property, you can request that your circumstance be reviewed. Of course, personal circumstances can change, and through taking physical and mental health support into consideration, it may be that a larger property is required. I will speak to housing officers about your situation to determine what else we can do to better support you. The review of the existing housing allocation scheme will cover all aspects of the scheme, and we will look to consult widely with residents and other stakeholders on issues such as mobility categories and medical needs. Again, I thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Begum. Can I now ask Georgia Lee Cleland to move to the front of the chamber to ask her question? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, councillors and members of the public. London has the highest number of rough sleepers in the UK, with Westminster having a higher proportion than other areas. Given the current housing crisis, including the rise in Section 21 evictions, up 41% year on year, the fact that half of tenants are struggling to pay their rent according to government data, and that rents are rising at the highest rate in a decade, both in the private and social housing sector, up 5.3% year to date. What is the council doing to deliver their 2019 homelessness strategy in line with their commitment to improve our services and response when people do become homeless, alongside your goal to have a homeless system fit for the future? Given the poor perception of Westminster Housing Solutions Services and RMG Residential Management Group, and the ongoing complaints of maladministration and lack of service, please include in the answer how you are measuring success and what role technology, if any, is being used to improve the service. Oh, sorry.
Thank you for your question. I now ask Councillor Lisa Begum to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for your question, Georgia Lee. Westminster has always been faced with a disproportionate number of people sleeping rough, and in response, the council spends roughly £25 million a year to deliver a wide range of homelessness prevention, rough sleeping support and accommodation-based services. I agree that the current climate is challenging, and we've seen this with approaches to Westminster's Housing Solutions Service increase by roughly 30% between April and August of this year, compared to the same period last year. The council's homelessness strategy has a strong focus on prevention, and in the past year, the council has prevented 651 households from becoming homeless. This includes moving just over 350 of those households into alternative accommodation. The current homelessness strategy runs until 2024, and we are already working on an engagement plan to support the development of a new strategy which will combine both rough sleeping and homelessness strategies. We measure success through a variety of ways, from qualitative measures of success from engagement sessions like our Community Thursdays, as well as quantitative success metrics and internal KPIs for ourselves and contractors. As part of the Housing Improvement Programme, we're exploring ways to make those measures more readily available to the public. Technology is also key to developing and improving the service. Homeless applications can be made online through the self-service portal, and households on the waiting list can also bid through an online portal. Further tech improvements and enhancements to our digital offer will form a key part of the development of the new homelessness and rough sleeping strategy in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Begum, and thank you, Ms Cleland, for your question and for coming this evening. Thank you. Finally, can I ask Carol Morin to join us at the front of the chamber to ask her question? No. I'm afraid Ms Cleland's question was the last question in this item. Thank you all for taking the time to participate tonight, and if you would like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you're more than welcome and can make your way to the public gallery. If you are leaving us now, I wish you a good night and thank you again for attending. A deputation request has been received with regards to item 13B on the agenda, the majority party motion on ecological emergency. Can I please have a mover of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. You going to speak? No? Okay. Can I please have a seconder of the motion? Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Sanquest has moved a motion for a deputation, and this has been seconded by Councillor Jude. We will now vote on the motion for a deputation by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. I now call Mr Simon Cole to address the full council. Mr Cole, please join us at the front of the chamber. Thank you, Mr Cole.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. I'm here as a representative of the Climate Assembly. You will debate later on the full recommendations of the Assembly, but what I'm here to do for 5 minutes is to give you an idea of what the Climate Assembly was and the conclusions and recommendations we came to. I have to say it's a fantastic day to be here talking about climate emergencies and how committed we are to doing something about it. But let's start with the good news. You have an awful lot to be enormously proud of the Climate Assembly. At a time where we risk complete disengagement between politics and the population at large, 47 of your residents spent 2 weekends and a number of glorious evenings on Zoom calls in this endeavour. And I can assure you they didn't do it for the money. This was a committed group of residents who represented not only a broad cross-section of the Westminster population, but also a cross-section of views on climate change. It's important for you to understand that these 47 people were not chosen because they had views on climate change of any particular nature. They were a cross-section. The council offered its hand to its residents on the important question of our age, and I was one of the people who accepted that. There are those of us who were cynical, and I'll admit I was one of them. Plain disclosure, I voted Labour in the local elections, and I liked the idea of the Climate Assembly when I saw it on the manifesto. But when I was one of the many people who received a letter suggesting involvement, I immediately thought this is a greenwashing exercise, PR, etc., etc. I was very cynical, and many people were. But I have to say, as the Assembly began to work, and much credit to Involve, who were the facilitators of the Assembly, it became a remarkably engaged group of diverse residents from Westminster. We were helped by an enormous amount of information, which was very well presented. And we were also helped and impressed with the climate leadership executives from Westminster Council. I know that all of the people involved in the Assembly would agree with me that we had an incredible representation of the skills that you have available to you within the Executive of Westminster to deal with this important issue. So the hand was grasped when it was reached out, and now it's for the Council to reciprocate and show that this is something that you take seriously. A set of 13 recommendations altogether you'll look at later, but 8 of the core ones had between 80 and 100%, and I think as politicians you call that unanimous. I'm not going to go into the details even of the 8. You'll look at them later, and I'm challenged for time. But let me just talk about the overall coverage. We spent a lot of time on buildings. Buildings is the #1 problem in Westminster. And of buildings, heritage buildings are the #1 concern. We spent a lot of time talking about educating and incentivizing people, and the recommendations have plenty of that. Myself and my colleagues were keen that whatever the Council does, it is always a carrot and a stick. And as part of that, education and inclusivity is important in breeding support. And finally, you'll see that the recommendations are very much about action, measurement, and reporting. In other words, continuing to look and learn and take action. There are easy, immediate actions. And by immediate, I mean immediate. Planning. There are a whole bunch of issues in planning which could be dealt with now in order to deal with many of the climate change issues. Much of the planning around heritage buildings. It is within your gift, notwithstanding government recommendations, to do something about it. That's just one example of immediate action, and you'll see there are, on every recommendation, we deal between immediate and long-term. A more complex medium-term example would be reusing and recycling building materials. But finally, there's one overarching recommendation with nearly 90% support. The climate change emergency is too important to be a victim of the political process.
Mr. Cole, could you wind up, please?
I will.
Yeah.
Climate change should be monitored by the Climate Change Assembly, and we've all volunteered to be part of that monitoring process on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Cole. Please feel free to listen to the rest of the meeting. Agenda item 8, questions. There are 45 minutes for questions. Will all members wishing to ask a question please indicate now and continue doing so until your request has been noted by the Chief Executive and Director of Law and Governance. Please remember that questions may be asked of a Cabinet member or a committee chair. I understand that as Councillor Robotham is not able to attend this evening, Councillor Swaddle will ask questions on her behalf. I will call members who indicated that they wish to ask a question after Councillor Swaddle has asked his questions. Questions should be brief, as should answers. Councillor Swaddle, please ask the first of your 3 questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to wish Councillor Robertson a speedy recovery. To Councillor Boothroyd, in the manifesto, Labour committed to participatory budgets. And I quote, "Local residents are involved in the process of deciding how their money is spent by the council, giving residents real control over their budgets, how their budgets are allocated." All we've had is a community grant scheme extending the scheme that we already had. That's a very different thing. Has he changed the definition?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and can I wish Councillor Robertson all the best for her recovery. Lexicography is not a function of local government.
I love how you take on responsibility. On what possible grounds can you justify excluding over a third of wards from this scheme. Are you not aware that there are pockets of real deprivation in even the most affluent wards? How can this postcode lottery be fair? I call on you to undo this manifestly unfair situation and ensure people in real deprivation and the organisations which support them are eligible whatever part of the city they're from.
Lord Mayor, I think I had better to start answering that question, but the detail of it will be for other cabinet members to take. I think since the economic credibility of the Conservative group retired and went to live on a farm, I think the current euphemism is, we have been trying to come in and give this council back some the residents some degree of confidence in the budget setting. I remain committed to doing that, but we are working through details to make sure that we are actually consulting people on something that they can legitimately change. The Community Priorities Programme is not a matter for me.
If I can answer the question for community priorities. So the Community Priorities Programme, as you rightly pointed out, was... Yes, but it's the community priorities.
You're talking about apples and oranges.
Shall I, about the wards being excluded, right? You want an answer to that. Right. So this programme was started before this administration, and under your administration, only 4 wards were eligible to apply. Now, we then extended it. So I think it's now 12 wards. But, however, although this programme is specifically about areas of disadvantage in those 12 wards, we are launching tomorrow a new programme, the Healthy Communities Fund, which will be £5 million for the next 4 years, and any organisation in any ward can apply to that.
Here, here.
Thank you for confirming that you are not listening to residents from the participatory budget perspective. This is to Councillor Hugg. What does he think is an appropriate time for a resident or a councillor acting on behalf of a resident to expect a reply of any sort to an email to a member of his cabinet?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And can I echo my colleagues' comments about wishing Councillor Robertson well in her recovery. The short answer, as someone who spent many a year waiting for responses to questions to cabinet members and officers in opposition, I appreciate there are sometimes things that move more slowly than others. What I would say is if you have any specific requests, please ensure that the Chief Executive is notified immediately. And the answer is that we need to be coming back as soon as is possible to first confirm that the issue is being looked at, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the specific issue can be answered immediately. But then it is important that all councils, we will expect that member services and cabinet members work together to ensure that a more detailed answer can be provided to you. Whenever this happens, and I'm not implying that under the previous administration there was misintent either. I'm just saying some of these things do take time. But I think if there are specific questions, the correct route for that is the Chief Executive, who has a duty on behalf of the Council to ensure that responses are given in a timely manner.
Supplementary. I won't be naming and shaming today, but there are cabinet members who are not replying within 2 weeks in any way, shape or form. And I think that is unacceptable. Will you give a guarantee that you will insist that your cabinet members and support team reply at least with an initial response within 2 weeks?
Thank you very much. Absolutely, in principle, I have no reason to why there shouldn't be at least an acknowledgement that the issue has been addressed. And I'm saying yes, but I'm aware that sometimes things will fall through there as they have done in the past. But the key thing is that I agree with you in the principle that any response should be happening within the time frame that you've identified. So absolutely in principle, and we will endeavour to make sure that that happens.
That's a very long yes, I think.
Better than a long
Marginally. Councillor Hugg, an additional question. All councillors in this chamber have been elected by residents and have equal status, whatever party they represent. Councillor Hugg, can you confirm that all councillors will be treated equally by this council and it will not favour Labour councillors with information, briefings or meetings.
Lord Mayor, I can confirm we will absolutely not, we will in no way deviate below the standards set by the previous administration. We will make sure that officers are behaving as they should be on behalf of all councillors. As I said, we obviously have a duty to ensure that the officer corps is operating on behalf of all councillors, and obviously we have, as I've just set out, there is a duty on all members to respond within appropriate timescales to questions that are asked. So, yes, there has been no attempt to deviate from past practice. Wherever possible, keen to improve on it. Indeed.
Supplementary. Perhaps then, Councillor Hugg, you could explain why Councillor Arundel was invited to a vital public meeting on the Gordon Hospital, while Councillors Harvey and Short were excluded by Councillor Butler-Thalasis. And on this topic, they had a topic that you tonight had sought cross-party support. Can he assure me that this will not happen again, and that when one councillor gets a briefing or a meeting, all councillors are treated equally?
Well, of course, as you know, we can hand to other members, but what I would answer is that we've had 2 public events on these which were widely advertised and made available last night. There was obviously a good turnout, so I can happily pass to...
I'll answer the... Okay. If I can answer the question. So, Councillor Arundel, nor Councillor Short, nor Councillor Harvey were officially invited to the event that happened yesterday, and that was a mistake. Councillor Arundel told me...
It's not a mistake.
No. So if I... Can I just explain? All 3...
Making it sound like there's some kind of conspiracy.
So all 3 councillors, Labour and Conservative, were not invited. Councillor Arundel came to me and said, why are you doing a meeting about something that's taken part in my ward and haven't invited me? And I said, oh, I'm very sorry, and showed her the leaflet so that she could come. At that point, I should have thought, wow, if Gillian's not invited, that means that neither is Councillor Short and Councillor Harvey. This was 2 days ago, and I didn't do that. And this morning, I wrote to Councillor Short and Councillor Harvey to apologise for this mistake. And I will endeavour to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you,
For a
Councillor
meeting that was widely publicly advertised.
Thank you, Councillor Butler-Thalasis. And Councillor Swaddle, thank you. Councillor Arundel, would you like to ask your question, please?
You've been invited.
Firstly, I would like to address my question to Councillor Begum. I would like to congratulate her, first of all, on the huge amount of positive measures that she has put in place since taking on the housing brief, and thank her for not emulating her predecessors. The housing improvement plan was set up in April. Could the Cabinet Member for Housing please give us an update on how the step change will improve housing services?
Thank you, Councillor Arundel. When I became Cabinet Member for Housing, it was clear that the service was not delivering for our residents. From an allocations policy that is not fit for purpose to a broken repair service, after a few months of trying to make adjustments, it became clear that a larger, more intensive programme of change and improvement was needed. So the Housing Improvement Plan will support officers to deliver this change, and in order to give housing the attention it needs, the service has been positioned as a standalone directorate under Sarah Warman. Working with Sarah and officers, I am confident that we will deliver the most important change in housing since City West Homes was brought in-house. Getting this right for our residents is vital, and we want our residents to have confidence in us and in our service. We provide, and in our service that we provide for them, from engagement and customer experience to repairs and major works, we know we have to do better, and we will. We're working hard to reconnect our housing officers and our residents, opening the new, recently we opened the new Bruckner Street Service Centre, which was a major step forward. And I'm looking forward to the Charwood Street Centre opening in October, helping to bring our housing officers closer to the communities they support. And of course, repairs continue to be a key priority. We're working on a whole new repairs policy framework, and the number of outstanding repairs is reducing. We are working to raise standards with our contractors to ensure our residents are getting the service they deserve. In all of this, we cannot forget the hard work of our housing officers, not just those in City Hall, but those working throughout the city. Through conversations with staff, it is clear that years of underinvestment in housing has left them short-staffed and under-resourced. So we are looking at working structures and looking to improve the area offices that our frontline staff work in, from Lucas Street to Westbourne Terrace, so that their workspace reflects the quality of office space that is in City Hall. This administration is overseeing the largest and most impactful change in housing since City West Homes, and with a new set of values and vision co-created with staff across
Councillor
the
Begum, could
directorate.
you
I
speed
am
it up, please?
confident that our staff are on board, and along with staff, our residents will be a central part of this journey. The service still has a long way to go, but I'm confident that we will see the improvements that we all want.
Councillor Dean, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care. A strategic needs assessment found that there will be a 45% increase in residents with dementia in Westminster between 2015 and 2030. Does the Cabinet Member support more care home facilities for residents with dementia and complex needs in South Westminster?
Thank you, Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. As I think you know, we have done a needs assessment to look at what the needs are going to be in the future for all our adult social care users in terms of how many people will need to live in the borough who are adult social care users. We know that currently over 50% of adult social care users, especially those with learning disabilities, are not living in the borough. And therefore, we need to make sure that we have a lot more housing in the future, specifically for adult social care. I know that you're talking about dementia. I'm saying that for all adult social care users, this is something that we need to look at. So, of course, I think it's very important that we do make sure that we have more provision that is in Westminster. As you know, that there are a lot of pressures in Westminster. We are building Carlton Dean, which will provide extra care housing there for people over 60. So that is one example, but there is more to do.
Supplementary. You voted against planning permission for a 134-bed care home for the elderly with dementia and a minimum of 12 hours per week of hydrotherapy pool access for the NHS in South Westminster. What are you doing to provide these much-needed services in South Westminster that you were able to turn this proposal down?
Okay, that's hilarious. So what I voted against was a proposal to take an office building and to completely pull it down with all the differences that makes for carbon offsetting, having two different proposals. One was for a private care home, the other one was for a private clinic. Now, you may know that Westminster has more than enough private hospitals and private clinics. I asked a specific question, which was, can I vote for this only as a care home, not as a private clinic? I was told, no, if you vote in support of this, it could be a care home, but it could also become a private clinic. I personally felt that that in terms of sustainability, pulling down a whole office building to build something which may have some public benefit but also may not, was not worth it, so I voted against it.
Okay. Councillor Fisher, would you like to ask your question? Yeah.
My question is for the Cabinet Member for Air Quality and City Management. Can you provide us with an update relating to the consultation process as regards Regent Street and the future of the street?
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. I'm delighted to say that we've had a very strong engagement on Regent Street from residents, visitors and shoppers about the vision for the future of Regent Street. The engagement activities involve 6 workshops with residents and businesses and other organisations such as cycling, taxi accessibility groups. We've had 4 pop-up events at Tatchbrook, Maida Hill, Church Street and Rupert Street markets, and 4 drop-in events at a vacant shop on Regent Street. Across all engagements events, over 300 people have so far participated. Alongside this, there's been an online survey which has had nearly 3,000 responses so far. Across all the engagement activities, people were asked what they like and dislike about Regent Street and what their priorities are to help guide the future vision and objectives for the project. The engagement report will conclude in a vision and priority statement for the Regent Street project over the next month or so. Thank you
very much. And a supplementary, if I may, Lord Mayor. This is not a local authority historically that had a very good reputation when it came to conducting consultations, at least not before May 2022. I'm asking you, Cabinet Member, what lessons has this administration drawn from those failures in the past, and what lesson in particular are we implementing as regards Regent Street?
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Yes, we've learnt a lot on, certainly through our Oxford Street experience, where we've turned a £30 million squandering by the previous administration into a 45 million investment from this council and a 45 million investment from the private sector to create a quality. And that, of course, doesn't mention the 6 million wasted on that notorious Marble Arch mound. But one thing we have learnt from certainly the Regent Street one that I've been closest to is that you need to ask people what they want out of anything that the council does. You need to get the priorities right first. And so far, the priorities identified by the people have been as follows. Firstly, people really believe that the priority of celebrating the heritage and the architecture and the world-class retail of Regent Street is the top priority. And I think that's absolutely right. Secondly, it's the pedestrian experience that's really important. Thirdly, unsurprisingly, given the close consultation with the taxi trade, managing vehicles is also clearly important. Fourthly, nature and greening is a priority for people. Fifthly, public transport. And finally, improving air quality. So we've got a very, very good steer from the public, from visitors, from businesses, and we'll be acting on that over the coming months and years to get Regent Street as an even better world-class destination and attractiveness, not just for Westminster, but for London and the nation.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Thank you, Councillor de Miltenberg. Councillor Barbara Arzimano, would you like to ask your question, please?
The Cabinet Member of Air Quality Management. In Marylebone Ward, the proposed east-west cycleway requires major changes that affect people's lives of up to thousands of local people living on and around George Street. There were 1,400 responses to the consultation on the proposed C43 cycleway. When are we going to know about how many people out of these 1,400 respondents were from Marylebone?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Arzimano. Yes, we had a terrific response on the C43 cycleway proposal. There were respondents from, indeed, Marylebone, but also from Hyde Park Ward, and there are a number of issues raised by those residents. And we'll be getting a report very soon. The analysis is very detailed because there were a wide number of issues raised, including residents parking along the George Street area, including servicing the frontages along George Street, including the school bus arrangements on George Street for the Wetherby Prep School, but also there were questions raised about in Hyde Park Ward regarding Stanhope Place and Connaught Square and general congestion and pollution. We're taking all those issues very seriously. We believe we have responses and practical ways of ensuring that all the issues raised by residents can be mitigated and can be dealt with. And we'll be bringing forward a report very soon, which will include all the details about where people came from who responded.
Supplementary question, Lord Mayor, for the same cabinet member. At Full Council Injured, the Conservative leader, Rachel Roberton, asked the cabinet member for highways if residents will get weighted consideration. He insisted that all responses would be treated equally. In other words, local people's responses would not get special consideration. Can the cabinet member please tell us if he has reflected on his previous reply and now changed his mind?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As I indicated by my previous answer, the specific concerns of local residents living in Marylebone and Hyde Park wards are the top of my attention. And those are the issues which will be the heart and the kernel of the Cabinet report that I will receive. Because those are the issues that we need to resolve if we're going to take this forward successfully. So although everybody's comments are equal in terms of they all count once, in terms of the concern that I give to the issues raised by local people, of course, they are the most important. And it's important that we get a resolution to those issues if we're going to move forward. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Cabinet Member. Councillor Small-Edwards, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A question, please, to the Cabinet Member for Young People, Learning and Culture. I'm just wondering if you could please provide an update on this month's launch of the expanded free school meal offer.
Yes, of course, thank you. We're very proud, together with the Mayor of London, to have extended the free school lunch offer that this council began in January with the cooperation and partnership of our primary schools. We're now able to expand that now to early years settings and then up to 14 for Westminster residents and Westminster schools. I visited 2 schools last week to see how the rollout was going. The food looked pretty good. We think it will support about 14,000 children in total to get a healthy, nutritious meal, and it will save families about £550 per child over the course of the year, which in the cost of living crisis is really important. So we feel like the council is doing a really important job in supporting families across the borough.
And can you please just expand on how critical the Mayor's support has been in this expanded free school lunch offer?
Well, I think the Mayor has been extremely clear that the challenge facing Londoners, including our residents here in Westminster, is really, really severe. The inflation figures today dropped a little bit, and I thought, there was a degree of fanfare, but food inflation is still at 6.8%, which is really, really significant for families across the borough. Prices won't be going down, they're simply going up at a slower rate. So the Mayor's contribution has been absolutely critical. We would not have been able to extend the free school lunch offer in the way that we have without his support. And in this year, with the cost of living crisis biting, it's been phenomenal.
Thank you. And on to Councillor Pitford. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Housing Services. Does the Cabinet Member think that 8 months is an acceptable time frame to answer questions from residents?
I believe you're speaking about the Russell House major works. First of all, let me say that's untrue. I have been in discussion with residents at Russell House, and I have asked the team to organise a meeting with them. So it's untrue that I have not responded to our residents. It's just not true.
So I understand you have responded but not actually answered the questions. So will the Cabinet Member commit to responding to the questions raised to her by email on the 27th of January by a resident of Russell House before the end of the month? And will she share her answers with all of the leaseholders and councillors?
I have actually responded, and there have been many threads around the same major works. I am happy to share those answers with yourselves and with other leaseholders.
Thank you. Councillor Tizzel, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the leader of the council. Over the last week and a half, we've seen the terrible tragedy that took place in both Morocco and Libya, something which is close to my heart, and I know close to a couple of other councillors here in Westminster. I'm trying to find out what has the council response been and how the residents get involved to help out.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor, and thank you, former Lord Mayor. I think we want to put on record our enormous sadness that we've all experienced looking at the devastation that has taken place in Morocco and Libya. And we have members of the diaspora from both countries, but as you yourself and Councillor Les is a testament to, we have a significant Moroccan population here in Westminster. And I'd like to thank you for your leadership in the wake of the crisis, speaking out and showing that the clear links between the City of Westminster and the people of Morocco in their time of need. In terms of the response from the City Council, we have set out a easily accessible webpage on the front page of our council website, directing people both to the British Embassy and for other foreign information, and providing opportunities to donate to Islamic Relief, Al Hazanir, and the Disasters Emergency Committee in relation to Morocco. And similarly, we are supporting, providing access to the Islamic Relief fundraising for the Libya Floods Emergency Appeal. Our Communities Department has been working with community representatives based here in Westminster and working with charities like Al Hazanir and Making Communities Work and Grow to work how we can support their efforts to fundraise and to provide support from London.
Thank you. Councillor Rigby, would you please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Question for the Cabinet Member for Climate Action, Regeneration and Renters. We've been working with Chiltern Railways and residents over several years to improve the air quality and noise pollution in and around Marlborough Station. Will the Cabinet Member share with me our disappointment that Chiltern Railways have abandoned their plans to roll out hybrid trains across their fleet following their year-long trial of combining diesel with battery operated?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Personally, I would share that, but it is Councillor de Bonkenberg who is responsible for air quality, so I direct the question to him.
That's all right, Lord Mayor. I share Councillor Rigby's disappointment about this. I joined the campaign to request Chiltern Railways initially to use non-diesel engines on the line. Should declare an interest. I live very close to Marylebone Station, so I know the situation very well. And it is very disappointing that they failed to do this, and they're stopping using non-diesel engines. So I'm very happy to write alongside you to express my disappointment at the Chiltern Railways decision.
Thank you for that very positive answer. A supplementary. Will he, however, join me in welcoming the introduction of the first green diesel hydro-treated vegetable oil-powered trains as a positive step in tackling the toxic fumes in and around Marlborough Station, and support our efforts to have Chiltern Railways to replace their existing diesel fuel trains with vegetable oil across their existing Class 165 and 168 trains?
Well, Mayor, I'm impressed by your train spotting knowledge. And I've learnt something tonight as well. So I'm delighted to join you, Councillor Rigby. More power to your elbow.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Hassan, would you like to ask?
My question is to the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health. In the context of Westminster's 2035 project, what are we doing to improve the health and well-being of our community? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to say that when I first came into this post, I was quite concerned about hashtag 2035. I've not been sure that we have been concentrating as a council as much as we should in this target of halving the gap in life expectancy. But over the past year, I'm pleased to say that there have been new initiatives. The most amazing of which is the Healthy Communities Fund that we are launching tomorrow to enable the voluntary and community sector to apply for funding up to 40k per organisation to deliver activities that will improve their health and well-being. However, this is only one strand of the work. There are other strands that have to do with improving co-production with our communities to make sure that what we're doing fits their needs, working together with the health service. At the moment, we are working on the governance of hashtag 2035 as a board, and I feel that in the next few months we will be able to say more about the programme. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, would you like to ask your question, please? Thank you.
To the Cabinet Member for Housing. As you're aware, Lisa, Hopkinson House Hostel is being closed, and I understand why the charity Look Ahead are investing elsewhere. The 63 residents are being held back from a life of trauma on the streets. Could you please explain, particularly for the benefit of South Pimlico and Vincent Square councillors, the work the council will do to ensure a smooth transition for these residents back, hopefully, to a happier life?
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So Hopkinson House will close in March 2024, and we have started now looking at all the service users in Hopkinson House, and we will ensure that there is no difference in the service that they receive right now. So there will be a smooth transition, and we're starting that work from now.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Councillor Begum. Supplementary, Lord Mayor. In recent years, Hopkinson House has become a focus for external drug dealers and for petty crime. Despite the work of council officers and police, local residents have been concerned for the many more troubled and vulnerable residents now at the hospital. The population has changed, and also by the criminals who have preyed on them. Could you please confirm that you'll keep in touch with all local ward members in South Westminster to share news about the closure and the resident moves, but most of all that every effort's going to be made to ensure that former residents don't drift back to the antisocial and criminal networks they're currently targeting in hospital? The former residents need that tailored support you talked about.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey, can you repeat that question? I couldn't hear what you were saying towards the latter part.
Normally do. So the hostel has been the target of criminality, gang members, and particularly with a more vulnerable resident population there. We're very concerned that some of those residents may be tempted to drift back into those networks. So I'm really asking, first of all, please keep in touch with South Westminster councillors, Pimlico North and South Vincent Square, who may be affected, but particularly the tailored support should focus on persuading people to be in their new communities, not to drift back to where they're most vulnerable.
So the work to ensure that service users will be transitioned smoothly into new services, and that work has already started. We will keep all the ward councillors briefed, and I know that you have already been briefed, so ward councillors have already been briefed by about the closure of Hopkinson House, and as things progress, we will continue to brief you. I can do that too.
Thank you both. Councillor Kaplan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member for City Management and Air Quality. I note from the Councillor's reports to his community that 100 evening parking marshal visits were made around Connaught Square, along with additional evening marshal resources being deployed around Park West, Burwood Place and Kendall Street. Can the Cabinet Member advise whether such a service is available to all councillors and the residents they represent?
Oh, come on.
The simple answer is yes.
That's it. I'm sure your officers will be delighted with the request that I have outstanding. Thank you.
Good.
I've also read that the council is able to get weeding done to cobbles in Frederick Close within hours, and also to get paint taken off the pavement in Blueberry Street also within hours. Can the council explain why, after 2 reports into the council reporting system, that paint has not been cleaned for 10 days in Lanark Road in my ward?
You guys used to brag about it.
Lord Mayor, I can only report on the success that I've had in my ward, and I'm very pleased that I've been able to achieve that. I'm sorry that you've not been successful yet in this venue. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're not reporting it correctly, or I don't know. I don't know. But
you didn't leave us with a very good website.
But
You can't help it.
all I can say is, I do my work, you do yours.
Arrogance of Labour.
Thank you, everyone. Councillor Wilkinson, your question, please. Oh. No? Okay. Councillor Sargent.
Question for the Cabinet Member for Young People, Culture and Learning. At the last Policy and Scrutiny Committee, you may recall guaranteeing that the work would start in the Tresham Centre at the end of August with completion by January 2024. Is this still the case, please?
Thank you. I don't think I would ever use the word guarantee. I'll double check. I think I'm more careful than that, particularly with the construction industry the way it is at the moment. But contractors have started on site, and I understand it's still on schedule to be completed in the new year. And I know all of us across the council are looking forward to that facility being up and running.
Thank you. Supplementary. Yes, so we have been informed that in fact it has only just started, but with a completion date now of spring 24. Can you guarantee the dates won't move again?
I mean, as I said, I'm careful with my language. I'm not going to make promises I can't keep. I said at scrutiny that it would start at the end of August. Contractors were on site a couple of weeks ago. I will do everything I can, as I have done so far, to make sure that it's on time and on schedule, and I'll write to the council and keep them informed.
Thank you both. Councillor Devenish.
Thank you. My question is for the Leader of the Council, but Councillor Coleman isn't here. So, Councillor Hugg, what work have you commissioned? Councillor Hugg, what work have you commissioned post-Labour Birmingham Council's bankruptcy to reassure yourself that this council is not at risk of a similar equal pay claim?
That would have been under you.
It would have started years ago.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much for that question, Councillor Devenish. I have spoken to the Chief Executive of the Council, who has reassured me that work has already been undertaken under your administration in the wake of the Birmingham finding, which is, I believe, 11 years ago, now to ensure that we have no outstanding equal pay claims here, and it is obviously something that we are monitoring with the work that we are doing going forward to ensure that we're treating all of our members of staff fairly.
Thank you. Supplementary. Of course, a Labour council would go bankrupt. Will you reflect on the need for robust public scrutiny and relook at your proposed changes to scrutiny on this council in light of what Donald Rumsfeld called the unknown unknowns we may face as a council in the future?
Thank you. I'm loath to take advice from Donald Rumsfeld, given his track record. It's not one that we would wish to emulate. As I believe will be discussed later, we have commissioned an independent review of the council's scrutiny from the leading scrutiny experts in the country. That has then been passed forward to a cross-party group of councillors who supported the recommendations, and work is ongoing to ensure that we bring scrutiny in this council into the 21st century and tackle some of the real challenges that we've had in scrutiny over the years to make sure that it's working for all councillors and getting and making a real contribution to the life of the council. We really appreciate the work that councillors have done over many years on scrutiny, but it has been extremely variable over about how it's been administered, and I think we want to improve that, and that's why this independent process was underway, and obviously the work is ongoing, led by the chair of scrutiny, Councillor Piddock.
Thank you. Councillor Scarborough.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Children, where we are, and our young people, culture and Learning, sorry. Please could you explain why St Vincent's School had in July to seek an advance in order to pay salaries because they had not received funding for the SEN for the previous 2 terms and that reimbursement? And regarding the latter, the same thing happened in January 21, December 22, and again they had to seek an advance.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not aware of the issue, and I'd welcome you sending me the information as soon as possible so I can look into it. It's very worrying.
Thank you. Well, my supplementary was that schools have enough pressures without having to chase delayed payments from the local authority. Can I have assurance that this situation will not arise again?
You absolutely can. I'll write to all councillors when I look into the matter further.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We have time for possibly 1, 2 quick questions. Hands up. Councillor Sullivan, thank you.
Can I ask the Cabinet Member for Planning and, what's your title again, Jeff? Economic Development. About the North Paddington programme, if you could provide us with an update about that.
Thank you, and thank you for asking me a question. I was beginning to think that I didn't have any mates tonight, so I'm delighted about that. I want to read you a quote from the City's plan. City plan says, North Paddington, it calls it the North West Westminster Economic Area, but for short we're calling it North Paddington. North Paddington has long contained some of Westminster's most deprived areas, with low levels of qualifications, earnings and health, and high levels of worklessness than elsewhere in the city. It's an area requiring coordinated intervention to tackle persistent levels of inequality. That's not our words, those are the words of the City plan passed unanimously, I think, in 2021. And the North Paddington programme gives flesh to that and will put some programmes behind the vision the council has had for so many years, after so many false starts. Very pleased with the Cabinet Member report coming imminently to sign off the projects that we're going to be launching in the next few weeks. We've got £1 million of revenue and £4 million of capital budget to spend this year, and also very pleased. I'll give you some examples of the kind of things we're going to do, actually. Early years support, including the community and family hubs and expanded youth provision. Activation of Maidenhill Market, improved links between health and employment services, a greening programme, allotments on the Mozart estate, a shopfront grant programme on Harrow Road, and new design work on what's going to happen under the Westway. So a whole bunch of things. And delighted that this week we've finally begun to improve Maidenhill Market Square. The hoardings are up, FM Conway are in. They said it couldn't be done, but we are going to repair and bring that square back up to a standard that the rest of Westminster would expect. Oh, and North Paddington is the blueprint for the rest of the city. Place-based working was one of the recommendations of the Future of Westminster Commission. We're going to get the governance and action plan right in North Paddington, and then it'll be coming to a location near you soon.
That is the end of time allowed for questions.
50 seconds, Lord Mayor.
50 seconds, it's hardly, yeah. Yeah, because actually I do also, we'll on to you in a second, Louise. I just wanted to say I am impressed by how many questions we actually managed to get through on behalf of our residents. Well done, everyone. Thank you so much. I now call on Councillor Louise Hyam to speak on her chosen topic of social housing in St James. Agenda item 9, Councillor Issue.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. St James's Ward, it sounds posh, doesn't it? And historic St James's is definitely very posh, with establishments such as the Ritz and Fortnum Masons, which are famous all around the world for being very posh. But actually, St James's is a very diverse ward, and I'd like to demystify the commonly held belief that all the ward is extremely affluent. And on a map of Westminster showing areas of multiple deprivation, you can see that St James's has several that are in the second most deprived category. In fact, when I'm asked about my ward, my response is that it is absolutely amazing, stuffed with some of the world's most famous landmarks, situated as it is in the very heart of London. But all human life is here, from the king in the palace to rough sleepers in doorways, and everyone else in between, a real microcosm of 21st century urban living. And despite what the leader of the council mansplained to me in response to my question at the last council meeting, it has plenty of social housing too. There are several large Peabody estates in Covent Garden and in Westminster near the Abbey, and added together, they alone house over 1,000 people. And also there are a number of homes built after the Second World War as part of a massive building programme of council housing promoted by Herbert Morrison, Labour's housing minister in Attlee's government, who controversially did or didn't utter the words, depending in which camp you sit, "We will build the Tories out of London."
Definitely did not.
I knew you'd say that because I read your comments on it. And our social housing is situated amongst the most expensive real estate in the world, with residents living cheek by jowl with some of the world's wealthiest citizens. A real city for all. And to be honest, I'm proud of this diversity and that we have a heady mix of people from all over the world who, due to their modest incomes, are eligible to live on our housing estates in St James's Ward. And some of them are even Tories and are even members of our ward committee. And whilst looking at the ward profile whilst preparing for this speech, I noticed that in a council survey carried out in 2021, it was heartwarming to see that 99% agreed that their local area within St James's is a place where people from different backgrounds get on well together. And this is the reason why our slogan was "A City for All." Which brings me on to Labour's slogan, "A Fairer Westminster." Is it fair that the new administration has slashed the number of intermediate homes that will be built for sale? Homes that cater for those who are not eligible for social housing, nor can afford to buy the very expensive homes in the private sector. These are the very people we need to live in the city, our key workers, teachers, police, firefighters, doctors and nurses, local government officers even, who we were anxious to help afford to buy here. With Labour's new policy, only the very rich and the poor will be able to live here, and lower income earners will be forced to rent and will never have the satisfaction and comfort of owning their own home here in Westminster. Is that a fairer Westminster? No. My colleagues and I definitely think it is not. Finally, I would like to update members on the question I raised at Council last time, and just to remind everyone, it was about a broken fire door in Vale Royal House, which was giving drug dealers and other criminals access to this council block in Chinatown and causing fire safety concerns too. Despite the leader of the council's assurance to me that the issue would be resolved speedily, weeks later, and despite numerous emails from residents and councillors, it took Councillor Shearer to send a video to the chief executive of the squalor that had developed there to finally get the door fixed. Is that the fairer Westminster that the administration crow about? But the worst, I can see I'm running out of time, so I'll just come to the end of my speech, which is about the number of complaints we are getting. And the most complaints we get are about the horrendous disarray in housing management, which is suffering from a complete lack of leadership. Labour has lusted for power for 58 years, as they keep reminding us. And now that they've had it for over a year, are they using it well?
No.
On present performance, particularly in housing, I would say an emphatic no. Time will tell if they can improve, but meanwhile, our city for all is crumbling, and there is little evidence of a fairer Westminster.
Yeah.
I now call Councillor Lisa Begum to reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for raising this issue tonight, Councillor Hines. So last week when I was told that you had a councillor issue and it was about social housing in St James Ward, I asked officers for some more detail, and they came back to me with your answer, which was social housing in St James Ward. So I wasn't able to put together a meaningful response. However, I absolutely take on board what you've said, and I'd be happy to have a conversation about the specific issues and cases outside of this room. At the outset, I would say that we are striving to do everything we can to improve the experience of housing for all our residents. The particular issues in St James's are indicative of the wider housing in Westminster. Repairs that have taken a long time to be done, persistent delays to major works, and historic mismanagement and neglect. I'm well aware of the concerns some residents at Vale Royal have about the current fire safety works, and we are responding to residents' concerns regarding antisocial behaviour with a dedicated security provision. I'm also keen to work with residents in Martlet Court. The issues that you have raised are understandably concerning for residents in St James's, but they are not unusual, and they certainly aren't issues that are a year old, nor are they exclusively a problem for St James's residents. Repairs, ASB and major works are issues for our housing residents across the whole city, and have been for many years. The difference is, I'm not going to stand in front of you today with some satisfaction figures and leave it at that. I know that the numbers do not reflect the true experience on the ground, which is why we're tackling the issues head on. Earlier this year, we kick-started our housing improvement programme, which will support the biggest transformation to our housing service since they were brought in-house in 2019. We want to radically improve repairs by bringing down the number of outstanding jobs, driving up standards with our contractors, having a dedicated team for complex cases, and empowering residents every step of the way. Through closer and more constructive working, we want to strengthen our relationship with housing associations and use these relationships to hold them to account. We want to join up our approach to antisocial behaviour by reviewing the working relationship between housing and public protection, so we can work together to protect residents so they can feel safe in their homes, improve enforcement and take more cases to court. And finally, we want to review our major works programme, from improving the standard and quality of works to engaging better with our leaseholders and tenants around the design and delivery of major works. It is an unavoidable fact that inflationary pressures have impacted on the cost of major works, and I'm conscious that for many of our resident leaseholders, the cost of major works may be hard to accommodate. And in recognition of this, we continue to offer the most generous repayment scheme of any London borough. We will continue to look at other options we can offer to our leaseholders to minimise the impact on them, and also on the HRA, which has to bear the cost of these major works for our tenanted properties. Councillor Hines, I want to thank you for bringing this councillor issue, and if you want to speak about the specifics of social housing in Westminster, I'm more than happy to speak to you later, because I've lived in social housing my whole life in Westminster. So if anyone knows about social housing in Westminster, it's me. Absolutely. And also, I want to take this moment to say it's really reassuring to know that the opposition really care about housing, because previously their legacy has been selling homes for votes.
Thank you. That concludes this item. We will now move on to the remaining agenda items: party business, reports for full council and notices of motion. The topics selected for debate and the names of those down to speak were tabled on the order paper sent to all earlier this week. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. Agenda item 10, party business. Agenda item 10, I have been advised that the opposition group have selected one topic and one of the reports tabled for debate this evening. The first debate will be on sustainable travel as set out in the order paper. I now call Councillor Caroline Sargent to open the debate.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Okay. We all want clean air that meets or exceeds WHO guidelines, and it was the Conservative administration who first called the climate emergency in Westminster in 2019. But not all that is green is good, at least not in Westminster. Pedicabs might be green transport, but they're a scourge to our residents, other road users, and tourists, and Cities of London and Westminster MP Nikki Aiken is working hard to regulate them. And we need to ensure transport and travel policies are proportionate and safe if they're to be sustainable. While rules for motorists become ever more restrictive, I'm sure we've all had near misses with cyclists jumping red lights, while delivery riders, even those on push bikes, are a law unto themselves. We need to consider whether we want a city transportation policy for all, or whether we want policies that primarily benefit young, able-bodied people without dependence, as much of what we're hearing about your proposals seem to be. And if the purpose of these policies is to further discourage private vehicle use, even electric vehicle use, we should also look at how this might disproportionately impact the elderly and people with disabilities. I'd like to focus my time in this debate on the equality impact of the changes proposed by this Labour administration, and highlight some issues that we on this side believe must be taken into consideration to protect the most vulnerable. There's a case in my ward which I think helps illustrate the problem. A resident approached me several months back to ask for help requesting an EV charging point outside her home. She has a disability and has done the right thing by switching to an e-Motability car. And like many others awarded Motability, she wants to live and work as independently as possible. Members will recall there was a form on the Westminster website to request EV charging points, and the form has been removed, so Westminster residents will no longer be able to request these EV charging points in their streets. Instead, I understand from officers that in future the council will decide where EV points are needed. Please will the Cabinet member explain what is happening? So my resident needs to be able to charge her vehicle in a disabled parking bay outside her home. And we will see this becoming more of a consideration for elderly drivers too. And eventually we'll all have to make the switch to electric vehicles over the coming years. The Equalities Impact Assessment on the proposed e-parking charges conducted last November also highlights there may be a negative impact on people with disabilities, yet suggests the current white and blue badge schemes mitigate these. We suggest there are more effects in other aspects of parking which we need to see taken into account. And in the case of disability bays, location and proximity to the user destination are obviously key. While we're lucky to have many EV points, merely sharing a map or putting up unenforceable no parking sign by adjacent bays is not going to help my resident with disabilities or others in your wards who are trying to do the right thing for the environment by switching to electric vehicles and also want to live independently. We also hear that some disability bays may need to be moved to accommodate the proposed new cycleways. It's not good enough if the bays are going to be moved 100 metres from a resident's home. The council's going to need to work really hard to make sure these bays do not become useless if they're located too far from the homes or workplaces of people with disabilities. And for those who can't just jump on a bike to get around and rely on public transport, often people on lower incomes, the elderly, women in caring roles and people with disabilities. We know that a number of bus network pinch points have now emerged in Abbey Road and other wards which impact accessibility and service reliability. So we're asking the Cabinet member to join us in asking TfL to revisit the changes to ensure they do not further marginalise our most vulnerable residents. And also will the Cabinet member assure me that EV charging solutions will be found for our existing resident disability parking bays, that all new disability bays will be assessed for EV suitability, and existing disabled parking bays in use will not be displaced to accommodate cycle lanes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Mitchell, I believe you're speaking this evening. Yeah, thank you.
Lord Mayor, thank you very much indeed. Lord Mayor, we all understand the importance of consultation with our residents, but consultation is only meaningful if we actually listen to what is said by those most affected and to use that to shape proposals. And that is particularly the case for schemes such as these which were proposed for the various cycle routes across the city, to make sure that they actually work for the people living closest to them. And we all need to be confident that they will serve the purpose of encouraging more people to walk and cycle around our city. What's the point of them otherwise? Members may remember that the very first question Councillor Robertson asked the new leader of the council was on the Park Lane cycle lane, a scheme imposed by the Mayor of London in June 2020 with no consultation or engagement at all with either this council or our residents. And he informed the council that because he had a much closer relationship with Mr. Khan, that Councillor Robertson would be, that he would be far more successful than Councillor Robertson in negotiating a solution that works for Westminster people. And there's no doubt he does have a close relationship with Mr. Khan, certainly a lot closer than Councillor Robertson's. And we were told by him and members of the front bench on numerous occasions of the money flowing to them from City Hall. But Lord Mayor, no matter how deep Mr. Khan's pockets, the first priority this council has must be to our residents. and we owe it to them to challenge the Mayor to improve schemes in our city so that they work for all of us. We must listen to the views of people who live here, not just rubber stamp any of Mayor Khan's schemes. So, we have finally been consulted by TfL on this Park Lane scheme, which we all know runs through the centre of our city. Following a Freedom of Information request, we have obtained a breakdown of the responses of the almost 1,000 people living in Westminster who took part in the consultation. And what do they say? The people most affected, the people whose views we were elected to represent. Well, 58% of them said that the scheme would either do nothing to encourage them to cycle or even do the reverse. For walking, it was even more stark, 72%. That's almost 3/4 of the total responses from Westminster people who think it will actually be pointless or discourage active travel. And what of the almost 300 Westminster businesses who responded? 68% said the scheme would have an adverse impact on cycling and 77% for walking. That is what the people we represent said. On top of this, a whopping 947 people expressed concern about the traffic congestion and the fact it was displacing traffic and running into surrounding streets. And I can tell you that in many wards, this is a real problem every day. And what was the response of this administration? Did they reflect the views of our residents and businesses? No, they welcomed the Mayor's scheme. So, Lord Mayor, here is our proposal to this administration. We all want to make active travel easier and safer in our city, but these schemes can only work when they're designed in conjunction with the people living nearest to them and most affected by them. They can only work when the people who know the area best, indeed inside out, agree that they will encourage more people to cycle and walk. So we are calling for the views of local people in consultations on cycle schemes to be given priority, and that they should only go ahead when and if the majority support them. It is well known that Councillor Robertson made a public commitment when she was leader of the council that the alfresco dining schemes would only be made permanent if the majority of local residents supported them. And we know that this was taken up in Soho, and that's why we don't have alfresco dining schemes in Soho, because we listened to local residents. So why should that be any different for C43 or C51? Why aren't the views of residents in Hyde Park or Marylebone or Regent's Park or Abbey Road carry the same weight as they do for the people in Soho? Lord Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
I just want to address some of the things that were just most directly said there by Councillor Mitchell, because as he'll know, myself and Councillor de Molenberg were quite involved in the Council's response to the Park Lane consultation, and I do take umbrage with the suggestion that views of residents weren't taken into account. We asked TfL to undertake continuous monitoring of the scheme beyond the initial ETO period. We expressed concerns about cyclists not yielding at the crossings of the floating bus stops. You didn't mention any of this. Presumably you read the Council's response, but you didn't mention any of that. And I do find it a little bit ironic that you are asking us to reflect the views of local people when you yourselves just abstained to let the chief person who came to present the recommendations of the Citizens' Assembly. You abstained on a motion to hear residents out. I'll take that. So you didn't read the order paper. So you haven't read my consultation or our consultation response, the Council's consultation response to Park Lane. You haven't read the order paper. You haven't listened to the Lord Mayor. I mean, frankly, it's just, this is not serious. This is not a serious proposition. It's absolutely unserious. And I think actually the topic is a very serious topic, and I think it deserves serious scrutiny. And we didn't get that in the opening two speeches. I think serious approaches need to start with a clear understanding of the problems that we face when it comes to sustainable travel and transport and air quality and all the things that the opposition have raised. So we have to ask ourselves, what's wrong with the way that we're travelling now? As you know, some of you might wonder. Well, firstly, we have a pollution problem. This month in Westminster, we are living with nitrogen dioxide levels which are 3 times the WHO guidance, which were referenced in Councillor Sargent's speech. I might note that the previous administration were quite content with the statutory UK levels. This council, on coming in, immediately said that our ambition was going to be much higher and it's going to be up to the latest WHO guidelines. So we are living with very high levels of nitrogen dioxide levels, and this month, PM 2.5, which is the smallest sort of particulate matter which penetrates deep into the lungs and heart, we're living with that almost the same, almost 3 times the WHO guidance. We also have a safety problem. But maybe not maybe not exactly the safety problem, although I do completely take the point around, people not feeling safe, in a variety of different circumstances on our roads. But it is important for us to look at the perspective. So in 2022 in Westminster, there were 1,402 road casualties, including 295 people walking, 430 people cycling, and 321 people on motorbikes. Unfortunately, that includes, the 2023 stats will include a man in his 50s who died on Harrow Road. Only about a week ago, I attended with council officers and the Met Police at the location yesterday, and I don't think it's good enough when it comes to road safety. And I read the tributes made by his family and his young girls and his wife to that man who was killed crossing the road in the early hours of a Sunday morning about 10 days ago. I don't think it's good enough to selectively take which bits of transport and travel you want to engage with. I think you need to look at the serious issues that are happening on our streets and the people who are dying and people whose health is seriously impacted every day. And I don't think either political party has gotten this right over the course of the histories of our political parties. I think that's absolutely the case. So I think it's right to start from that position that you're gonna pick up on particular schemes you don't like. I think you need to zoom out and look at the serious problem we have. We also have a massive inactivity problem in Westminster. We know that 2 in 5 children are considered overweight by the age of 11, and there's been significant increases over the past few years, and transport plays a huge part of that. And we have a climate problem. We're not living within the planet's means, and that includes how we travel. 11% of our carbon footprint are road transport emissions. And the UK Climate Change Committee says that we need to achieve at least a 17% reduction in miles driven by 2050 across the UK. So I think we're taking serious action to address issues around air pollution, to address issues around road safety, and I don't think it's fair for the opposition for you to come along and cherry pick individual situations and say that we haven't listened to consultations that haven't concluded yet. You're saying we're not listening to the consultation on C43 and C51. They haven't concluded yet. But we're not predetermining. I don't know why you're predetermining that we haven't listened to anyone. So, I mean, I just want to say a couple of things in closing. I'm sorry if I go a couple of seconds over, Lord Mayor. That, it was really disappointing. I think, from the beginning it was clear that Rishi Sunak had already showed his unseriousness in tackling the serious risks of road danger, of our climate, of air pollution, when he declared war on 20-mile-an-hour zones and historic traffic filtering. But
Councillor Sullivan,
pushed the ban.
Councillor Sullivan, I'm afraid you have to wind up. Councillor Sullivan, please.
Today he's pushed out the ban by 5
Councillor
years.
Sullivan.
Can Ed Pitford please tell us,
Councillor
does he
Sullivan.
agree with that ban being pushed out?
Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Councillor. Councillor Pitford, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Currently, drivers of electric vehicles enjoy the freedom to park for free under a residence permit and need only pay for a maximum of 10 minutes under the Pay to Park scheme to be able to park for the full time limit of that particular bay. We heard at last full council that these rates may be increased by the Labour administration, and I want to outline why I think we should freeze EV parking charges. The decision on whether to increase these costs or not can be boiled down to some very interesting root questions about what we would like to achieve with a dose of human behaviour and realism applied to try and get to the optimum outcome. I imagine that those sitting across the aisle would like a car-free city. However, some people need to use a car or van. The elderly, people with disabilities, journeys with multiple young children, tradespeople or large delivery vehicles. So we would like to see electric or hydrogen vehicles fully rolled out for those who still need a vehicle. Let's examine the reasons to charge for parking: climate change, congestion, and air quality. Climate change. Battery electric vehicles emit no CO2, whereas combustion engine vehicles and hybrid vehicles do. So from a climate change perspective, assuming EVs charge with green electricity, they are a clear winner over their lifetime, and with a climate crisis declared, are worth encouraging over combustion engine vehicles. From a congestion perspective, all vehicles are equal. So far, so easy. Then we come to air quality. Air quality is impacted by tailpipe emissions, brake emissions, tyre emissions, and road surface emissions. Tailpipe emissions, again, are easy. None from electric vehicles, and a great deal from combustion engine vehicles, including nitrous oxide, which is the main reason that diesel vehicles now have such a poor reputation. Brake emissions. I've read conflicting papers on brake emissions, but it does seem that new electric vehicles capture all emissions from the brakes due to their regenerative braking and therefore have no brake emissions, whereas combustion engine vehicles do. Tyre emissions and road surface emissions are impacted by the mass of a vehicle. A battery electric vehicle is about 20% heavier than an equivalent combustion engine vehicle, and reports show that emissions from tyres are up to 25% worse than combustion engine vehicles. However, new tyres, specifically designed for the heavier vehicles, are being sold, and this can reduce their emissions by 30%, bringing them back in line with, or even below, combustion engine vehicles. So all vehicles emit tyre emissions and cause road surface emissions, which include the harmful PM10 and PM2.5 particulates that erode our air quality. A quick summary at this stage. Climate change, EVs win. Congestion, all vehicles are broadly equal. NOx emissions, EVs win. PM2.5 and PM10, EVs and combustion engine vehicles are roughly equal. If we were purely looking at climate change, which some may argue we should, given the severity, then continuing to incentivise EVs as much as possible makes sense. If we're including air quality, then EVs are better, but not perfect. We have the question of, will increasing parking charges stop a driver buying a vehicle, or will they stop a driver choosing an electric vehicle? These people are still likely to buy a vehicle, so at this stage we need to keep the benefits of going electric as large as possible to encourage that choice. EVs are still more expensive than petrol cars for the upfront cost, and therefore everything that we can do to encourage the purchase of an EV over a combustion engine vehicle is still beneficial. We're not going to stop someone needing a car with parking charges, but we may be able to incentivise them to pick the least bad option for our environment and air quality when choosing a car. There may come a point where these charges can be increased, when EVs come down in price below combustion engine vehicles, but we are not there yet. And finally, we must consider those residents, workers or businesses who have already purchased an electric vehicle on the promise of cheaper parking. This will have been part of their consideration in choosing a vehicle, and as with any government incentive, we should consider their investment decision when changing the rules, so as not to impact future investment decisions. Therefore, Lord Mayor, I urge this council not to increase the parking charges on electric vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Paul de Moldenberg to reply.
Lord Mayor, first I want to address the points that Councillor Sargent made regarding the request an EV charger. We've looked, and there seems to be a temporary problem with the website, which is being, it's going to be fixed. It will be fixed. It will be fixed tomorrow, I hope. The executive director is here and has heard me say it will be fixed tomorrow, and I hope I hope it will, because we've got a terrific record on EV charging. Only over the past year, we've increased the number of EV charging points by almost 1,000. We are now thank the officers, our terrific officers in the Highways Department who have achieved this rollout. They're now working on increasing the number of rapid and fast chargers so that we increase from something like 150 to around 220 over the next year. So overall, we'll have something like 2,500 electric vehicle charging points in Westminster. I think I read up somewhere a few months ago that it's more than in the whole of Birmingham, Manchester and Liverpool. So we can say quite clearly that we have got a great record on EV charging and we're improving it year on year. But the point that you made is very important. If you can send me the details of your constituent who wants to request an EV charger near where they live, please do, and I'll ensure that that request is processed along with all the others that we get. This is a really important issue, and we are looking at it very, very carefully. The point that Councillor Pickford made about electric vehicle charging is, I can answer those directly. When we introduce the revised emission-based parking charges, Westminster residents will still pay the lowest in inner London. That is a promise, and that will be a fact. We haven't worked out the exact figures just yet, but certainly for residents, they will pay the lowest in inner London continually, whether they have an electric vehicle, a hybrid, or a petrol or diesel. So residents can be assured that they will continue to enjoy the lowest residence parking charges in inner London. In respect of pay for parking charges, yes, we do believe that it's important to introduce charging for electric vehicles. Now, you're right. If you're an electric vehicle owner and you park for 4 hours, you pay something like 80p to park your car. Is that fair at a time when we want to reduce congestion as well as improve air quality? I ask you to consider that in order to ensure that our streets are safer and our streets are cleaner, as well as being fair to the motorists. Because we understand reality. The reality is cars will play an important part of our urban transport system for many years to come. We have no agenda to get rid of cars. We have got an agenda to improve life for cyclists and for pedestrians, and that's our agenda, and that's the way in which we're going to improve air quality, reduce congestion, and make it safer for people to walk on our streets. It's interesting that at a time when the planet faces the most awful challenges, the Prime Minister goes on television to hoodwink us and to tell a story all based on culture wars. We don't believe the people of this country, indeed the people of Westminster, believe this nonsense, and if you look into your hearts, you don't believe it either.
Councillor de Moldenberg. Councillor de Moldenberg. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor de Moldenberg. Thank you. Thank you. The next item for debate is the report for full council entitled Policy and Scrutiny Review, listed as item 12 on the agenda. The vote on this report will take place after we have heard from both speakers rather than at the end of the meeting. I now call Councillor Mark Shearer to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This evening I will be speaking on the PNS review and the papers I was asked to consider for sign-off at the recent General Purposes Committee. Despite this chamber often being a cauldron for feisty and sometimes adversarial debate, tonight I want to speak to all councillors across the House and appeal to them. This is because my speech goes to the very nature of why we're here, why we knock on doors, why we dedicate our time and our lives to represent the communities and the residents in Westminster. Tonight my speech is about something that both Councillor Devenish and Councillor de Moldenberg will agree on, I believe. It's about maintaining fair, transparent and accountable scrutiny for all members of this council, not just now, but for future years. Firstly, I want to thank Councillor Piddock for her work in chairing the scrutiny review. That's no small or mean task. Having been involved in a committee meeting myself, I know the extent of work involved and the collaboration this project has entailed. I also know that Councillor Mitchell has enjoyed a good working and collaborative relationship with you, so thank you. I understand the final draft of the PNS Task Group report is still due for completion. With the inks yet to seal this important document, I will explain why I felt compelled to vote against the General Purposes Committee paper and why I hope Councillor Piddock and the Labour councillors will consider my 3 points. I believe these go right to the heart of the ability of Westminster Council to have a political debate and that we need to safeguard these items or principles in the final PNS review document. The first is about accountability. Westminster Cabinet members have a totally unique position in local politics. The portfolios they administer are huge, they're complex and they carry genuine risk and opportunity for the residents who rely on them. In the General Purposes Committee report, it suggested Cabinet members attending the meetings should be the exception rather than the rule, and then makes a vague suggestion that Cabinet members will attend update meetings. Whilst there is no current wording in our Constitution that Cabinet members must attend PNS meetings, they always turn up. Always. This is because the buck stops with them. They have ultimate responsibility. And there is nothing purer than asking direct questions to the person and the people responsible. The second is my concern that finance, which is currently in the Finance Planning and Economic Development PNS Committee, has been left out of the new thematic committees. I totally appreciate the new structure follows themes rather than portfolios. I also appreciate we separately have an audit committee and budget scrutiny. But, in my opinion, because it doesn't naturally fit within a theme, we cannot leave finance portfolio scrutiny to the Westminster Scrutiny Commission. Whilst we have different politicians and different political positions, both parties agree that finance is a critical function that enables this council to deliver its services. If we don't collectively maintain healthy finances, this council simply cannot carry out its duties. My third concern was the report's suggestion that councillors not involved in PNS could not get involved in a task group. This doesn't sit right with me. Any democratically elected councillor outside the Cabinet should have the ability to ask a PNS committee to consider setting up a task group and being part of that. This will enable them to have the eyes, ears and thoughts of their fellow councillors and officers on matters that are important to them and their residents. There is no doubt that our current PNS structure is unique. It is more accountable than most other councils. It currently engages the Cabinet members more directly than usual. That's because this is Westminster, and there is only one Westminster in the UK. We need to create a system and structure that reflect our city and our council's workings. This is more important than looking to adhere to other PNS systems just because they exist in other authorities. Tonight, I'm asking this chamber to consider, to really think through these points and to support a call to refer back the General Purposes report on these subjects. If members of this chamber vote this report through tonight, they will be weakening the democratic accountability of this council and undermining the ability of all councillors to question decision makers on behalf of their residents. It will damage the trust of the people of Westminster, namely that the councillors they elect are transparent and answerable to them. I therefore ask Councillor Piddock to withdraw this proposal and bring the report back to the next general purposes meeting with cross-party support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shearer. I now call Councillor Angela Piddock.
Can I make a brief speech of
True.
the...
Can he? Can he intervene?
Yeah, it's a good question. Why have you decided now that you don't like
Hitchcock
it?
originally approved the report?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Sorry,
come
Councillor
on,
Boothroyd.
Mark.
It will go to Councillor Piddock in the first instance, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Shearer for the work he's done and for his kind comments. I just want to explain a bit how we've actually got here. Councillor Hugg has already said there was an independent review by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, and this included interviews with senior officers and members from both parties. Scrutiny in Westminster was found wanting. It was unfocused, defined by quantity over quality, and too tied up with performance management. And this was at the expense of genuine strategic action to influence, this was at the expense of genuine strategic action to influence policy by making an assessment of the impact of decisions taken by Cabinet. A cross-party, and I want to stress that,
Absolutely
a cross-party scrutiny improvement task group was set up to work through the recommendations. The work that we did was driven and is being driven by the need to ensure that scrutiny has an impact and is effective and does not get lost in activities that were not part of scrutiny. The new arrangements aim to enable scrutiny members to really understand and influence policy through committees or task groups, and I'll come to those later. To this end, there will be training and briefings sessions as required. The most obvious change and improvement is the restructure of committees. These are no longer constituted solely in opposition to Cabinet member portfolios, but follow a thematic approach. The new structure ensures that all the Council's functions have a home with policy and scrutiny. Apart from an overview and scrutiny committee, there are 4 scrutiny committees. Young people, learning and employment, vulnerable adults, health and communities, housing and regeneration, and climate action, environment and highways. I welcome the opportunity to be able to, I think and hope, put Councillor Shearer's fears at rest and explain to the rest of the Council. I want to dispel the misapprehension that Cabinet members will not be required to attend scrutiny committees. Of course they will.
Yeah.
Cabinet members will attend committee meetings to present their emerging policy proposals in order to get feedback and be scrutinised on the effectiveness and impact of decisions they have made. As now, it will not always be necessary for both Cabinet members to attend every scrutiny committee. A briefing session prior to the formal committee meeting, at this briefing session, scrutiny members will have the opportunity to hear what the Cabinet member has been doing and to ask questions to fully understand what the issues are. The Cabinet member will be asked what his or her priorities are. And in a way, this in itself is a form of scrutiny. There is also an opportunity for members to ask for more information about the issues identified by the Cabinet member or the members, so that when they come to scrutinise, they are better informed and questions are more focused. They're also better placed to make recommendations, if appropriate. Prioritising is important. Indeed, government guidance as well as the review, emphasise that scrutiny is not effective if it tries to cover everything. Interestingly and specifically, a previous Minister for Local Government, a certain Rishi Sunak, stated, and I quote, "Prioritisation is necessary," which means that scrutiny will look at everything. Indeed, the review and government guidance emphasises that scrutiny is not performance management. Can I just deal with performance management? As I'm sure
Councillor Piddock, you're
President
now
Company-
you're into the red. I'm letting you know if you want to curtail. Yep.
Sorry?
Yep.
Time's up. Sorry, I forgot it was only 2 minutes. Anyway, the aim... Sorry about this. Task groups, important, will not be... the aim is that task groups will be inclusive, and the aim is to draw on all the experience
Councillor
and
Piddock,
expertise.
sorry, we're now well over. You've had an extra minute and a half.
All right, I'm confident. Can I
Yep.
just, one last sentence?
No,
I'm
and
confident
Councillor Piddock,
that
Councillor
the
Piddock,
steps
please.
the cross-party improvement scrutiny task
Councillor
group is
Piddock, can we
taking-
please move to the vote? Thank you. We will now vote on the recommendations of the report for full council entitled Policy and Scrutiny Review. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour?
Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Hitchcock, this is your work product. Are you going to vote in favour of it? This is your work product.
At the committee, Councillor, as you well know.
Shameful.
Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? No. I declare the recommendations are agreed.
We don't want the Cabinet having to be accountable, do we?
Thank you. That concludes this item. Agenda item 13, notices of motion. There have been 2 motions submitted for debate. The first motion to be debated is motion 13A, submitted by the majority party, entitled The Gordon Hospital and a Lack of Acute Mental Health Provision in South Westminster, as set out in the agenda. There will be a single debate on this motion, and I will then call the vote. As mentioned previously, the names of those down to speak are tabled on the order paper. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. I now call Councillor Navsika Butler-Thalasis to move the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The motion in front of you pretty much says everything you need to know about the situation. The Gordon Hospital was closed at the beginning of the pandemic on the basis that it wasn't safe to operate, and it was never reopened when the emergency was finished. This has meant a lot of pressure across the system on the lack of beds, which means that while some Westminster patients are treated in St Charles, in Kensington and Chelsea, many are placed far away from Westminster where they don't have a support network, and some patients are having to wait a very long time for beds in A&E, an average of 22 hours. And this puts a lot of pressure on other patients and staff in A&E, but it's also a very horrible patient experience. And there has also been an exacerbation of problems locally with lack of mental health support to the local homeless population. In the 3.5 years that the Gordon Hospital has been closed, there has been a persistent message from the NHS that the building of the Gordon Hospital isn't good enough. And it is true that the residents there have to share bathrooms, but that is hardly unheard of situation in the NHS. Patients also share bathrooms in many long-term hospital wards. They share bathrooms in St Mungo's supported accommodation for mental health service users. So while we would all agree it's not ideal, it doesn't render a hospital unusable. We have also been told that the Gordon has no outside space in comparison to St Charles. In fact, the Gordon had a lovely rooftop garden. St. Charles, in comparison, has only one ward that has access to outside space. The other wards have access to something which euphemistically is called balconies, but it's actually just a space with a mesh instead of an outside wall. So there is no real difference between the two. There is no other building locally that could be converted to a hospital. So now we are 3.5 years since the closure, and finally the consultation is about to begin. The consultation options from the NHS are that we have been told that if we want acute beds in the Gordon Hospital reopened, a number of community mental health services will have to close, as there's not enough funding for both. Instead, they propose that instead of mental health beds in the Gordon Hospital, we can have the Mental Health Crisis Assessment Centre, which is currently located in St. Charles, and expanded and relocated at the Gordon. This would mainly be just a relocation of an existing service with some expansion, but that would be all. It's not the same as 51 beds. Neither of these is a very good option. So ultimately, in the consultation, we have to be very clear on the importance of inpatient beds. If we lose these beds, we will never get them back. And Westminster, the borough with the highest health inequalities, the largest homeless population in the country, very significant mental health needs, not only in our own local population, but also in the huge number of visitors that we have every day. How can a borough like this not have any mental health beds? We have received some excellent news lately that the Mayor of London has decided to assess whether the closure of the Gordon will meet the 6 tests necessary for healthcare reorganisation, and he will be appointing an independent reviewer to assess this and respond to the consultation. 3 of those tests are particularly relevant. They're about health inequalities, they're about whether there are sufficient hospital beds, and they're about the impact on social care. And I think that this reorganisation cannot possibly pass any of those 3 tests. We as an administration, together with partners in Kensington and Chelsea, we have been writing letters to the Secretary of State, NHS England, and the Mayor of London. We have commissioned independent reports and held community meetings. And I want to leave you with a quote from the last community meeting from a service user who attended. And she said, the treatment was fine, the building was fine, I met some amazing people there. I was close to my family, my community, and my church, and they pulled me through. I can now look into the eyes of the person who sectioned me, who is in this room, and say thank you for doing that. It was the best thing for me. And I think that shows how important it is that we maintain acute mental health beds in Westminster, and we work together to achieve this. Thank you.
I now call Councillor Lorraine Dean to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In 2020, there was a temporary closure of the inpatient wards of the Gordon Hospital, which resulted in the loss of 51 acute mental health beds in South Westminster. At that time, 72% of admissions were from Westminster or the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, our borough partner. Today, the nearest mental health hospital is in RBKC at the St. Charles Centre for Health and Wellbeing. Not very convenient if you live in South Westminster and are in a mental health crisis. However, a network of alternative community-based services was put in place across the borough to compensate for the reduction of acute mental health inpatient beds. In August, I visited the Westminster Wellbeing Pathway, WWP, and the Move On and Resettlement Service, MORS, which has 32 units of mental health supported accommodation in my ward of Little Venice and the neighbouring Maida Vale ward. I was impressed with the service run by St Mungo's, which provides accommodation and psychology support for people aged 18 years and over with a Westminster connection, who have a diagnosed mental health condition and are under the care of CNWL Mental Health Services. The aim of the service is to provide time-limited programs of development and support to enable them to better manage their mental and physical health, recover lives that are meaningful to them, that are productive and contributing, and to build the resilience to sustain them, reduce hospital admissions, and minimise their reliance on statutory services, move on to independence or other permanent long-term accommodation as soon as they are ready, or where their changing needs require other services. As good as these community-based services are, there is always going to be a need for acute mental health hospital beds for those who are going through a mental health crisis and are at a high risk of harm to themselves and others. St Charles only has 67 beds, which often means Westminster residents are treated in hospitals outside the borough, sometimes very far away. This makes it difficult for their family, carer, or support network to keep in regular contact. There are several research papers on the beneficial impact family involvement can have in the care of a mental health patient in crisis. The World Psychiatric Association have said that family involvement has been shown to significantly reduce relapse and rehospitalisation rates in patients with mental illness and reduce the burden and stress levels of carers. A quote from Bird and others in 2010 said, if a family member or carer is involved in a service user's treatment, the impact of the treatment lasts longer and improved outcomes are maintained. Despite having a good network of community-based services, we are still going to need an acute hospital bed provision in South Westminster, where families will be able to be more involved in their loved one's treatment. This is why we suggested an amendment to the original motion from the Labour Party, which limited provision only to the Gordon site. We need to listen to the NHS, which says the Gordon site is unsuitable for long-term inpatient beds. We need a provision providing a modern, positive environment so that the patients can focus on recovery and return to independence. I second this motion.
Thank you, councillors. We will now vote on motion 13A, the Gordon Hospital and a lack of acute mental health provision in South Westminster, as laid out in the agenda by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. The second item to be debated is motion 13B, submitted by the majority party, entitled Ecological Emergency, as set out in the agenda. There will again be a single debate on this motion, to which I will ask Councillor Judd to reply. I will then call the vote. As before, the names of those down to speak are tabled on the order paper, and each speaker has up to 5 minutes. I now call Councillor Ryan Judd to move the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am delighted to be proposing this motion tonight, declaring an ecological emergency here in Westminster. This week marks 4 years since the Council declared its climate emergency, which has galvanised climate action in Westminster, putting resources and a fantastic team of officers into place to fight, to act on this crisis. And as you all know, local action to support the environment is a top priority for this administration. Similar declarations across the country have meant that discussing the climate emergency is now fairly mainstream, and rightly so. But the other side of the coin is not always placed on an equal footing, or at least not yet. And the declaration made in this room 4 years ago, unfortunately, did not go far enough. Unlike other councils, it did not cover the second of the twin intertwined crises that we currently face, the ecological emergency. Tonight, I'm pleased that with this motion, we'll begin to set this right. And in these opening remarks, I'll explain why this is something that we should all care about. The UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. Since the 1970s, we've lost more than 97% of our wildflower meadows, 70% of our wildlife populations, and 15% of UK species are currently at risk of extinction. When we say emergency, when we say crisis, we don't use those words lightly. And we feel that loss here in Westminster too. We're lucky in Westminster that a quarter of our land is green space, despite being in an urban environment. With 33 sites of importance for nature conservation, or SINCs, but according to the latest available data, 39% of these 33 sites, only 39% of them demonstrate average to rich or rich species diversity. But as we've seen nature decline, we have also happily seen people's concern about the situation rise. And in fact, our recent Citizens Climate Assembly, of course we heard from them earlier, decided that one of its priority recommendations to the Council is that we need to do more on biodiversity. Well, as part of this motion, we will begin our journey to act on the Assembly's recommendations, and I'm sure my fellow councillors will say more on this shortly. So I've laid out the current situation, but why is this so important? Well, firstly, at the macro level, we rely on our natural ecosystems. We rely on them for our food, for our water. We rely on them to live. And as I mentioned, nature loss is intrinsically linked to the climate crisis. As we destroy habitats and ecosystems, we reduce our ability to absorb carbon and reduce our emissions, which warms the planet, destroying more habitats, and the cycle continues to repeat. But more tangibly and locally, nature impacts our everyday lives, with benefits that we should all want to maintain. Evidence suggests that both adults and children learn better when studying in an environment that's rich with nature. Biodiversity encourages and enhances outdoor relaxation and exercise, leading to countless health benefits, both physical and mental. It helps combat heat stress, flood risk, it cleans our air, but it also helps foster a sense of pride in the area that we live. You may or may not get as excited as I do when a rare bird flies past, but I'm sure you thoroughly enjoy hearing the birds singing when you walk through your local green space. Wouldn't it be great if that could be common on all of the streets of Westminster? And there are, of course, also economic benefits. Just on health alone, it's estimated that Londoners avoid £950 million per year in health costs due to our biodiverse public green spaces. It would be a disaster to lose those benefits, but we also have the opportunity tonight to begin to increase them. So with this declaration today, we announce this is something that we take seriously, and we also set out the steps that we're going to take to halt and reverse our local biodiversity loss, to seize that opportunity. I am proud that this administration has already begun to change how the Council looks at the ecological emergency. I'm proud to be the first ever named Cabinet or Deputy Cabinet member with biodiversity in their title. And I'm proud of our actions over this last year to really change the agenda on this, banning the harmful weed killer glyphosate, asking private landowners to follow suit, introducing No Mow May for the first ever time in Westminster, our Wild Gardens Challenge, the Greening Westminster Fund, environmental justice measure, and a lot more. But there's still so much more that we can, should, and will do. Tonight's motion is just the start. It acknowledges the link between the climate and ecological emergencies and the importance of nature to our lives. It explains that we'll bring together these ongoing actions, and I'll go into more detail on the specific next steps in my closing remarks. But I'll end here for now, and I hope this has shown why this is an issue that we should all care about, and I hope you can all support this motion tonight.
Sorry about that. I would now call Councillor Cara Sanquest to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm delighted to second the motion this evening. While news breaks about the Conservative Party's shameful rollback on its commitment to net zero at a national level, I'm worried for our climate and I'm worried for our ecology. But I am proud that this Council and this Labour administration will be doing everything we can at a local level to achieve climate justice and to protect our local ecosystems. And now this will be bolstered by a response to the intertwined ecological challenges that Councillor Jude has outlined. It's very hard to go far in Westminster without coming across a valuable habitat. Our canals, our trees, our rivers and our parks, our green spaces, our gardens, tree pits and window boxes, all of them play a role. And we must do what we can as a council to support these ecosystems, working with businesses and partners across our city, supporting our communities and our residents to come together to protect our ecosystems in their local areas. We've recently pulled together all of the projects in operation currently in support of nature in our city into a single webpage to make it easier for residents to get involved. And there are lots of them. Community gardening at Queen's Park Gardens, rewilding Belgravia. There's newly published guidance on how residents can brighten up tree pits with plants, thanks to Councillor de Moldenberg. We've had No Mow May. There's allotments in King Solomon Academy, and of course we've had the Greening Westminster Fund, thanks to Councillor Fairclough. The aim is that there is something for all communities to get involved with and for us to work together with our residents to address these twin emergencies. By setting out a course of action tonight, which will take place in conjunction with our ongoing Climate Emergency Action Plan, we're underlining this administration's commitment to action and to protecting nature, and importantly, to working with our communities to progress our work on this. Recently, Westminster's inaugural Climate Assembly took place. This work was led by Councillor Noble and supported by Councillor Jude and I, and it will lay the foundations for how we as a council work together with residents to address the climate crisis. I want to note my thanks to the Climate Action team, some of whom are here today, and the Communities team who supported the Assembly, alongside experts in deliberative and participatory democracy. I was happy to attend the Climate Assembly along with Councillors Jude, Councillors de Molenberg, Councillor Noble, Sullivan and the Leader of the Council. And it was great to have a representative of the Assembly here this evening. The Assembly was held over 2 weekends. One was extremely hot, so rather fittingly, due to the heat wave, the second weekend had to be moved to a different venue. Over 10,000 households in Westminster were invited to take part, and a two-stage lottery was carried out to select a cohort who accurately represented the diversity of our city's population. As we heard from Simon earlier, it's fair to say that some members of the Assembly were passionate about the process from the start, and some were a bit more cynical. Assembly members heard from the Council, from climate scientists at Imperial College, and from people delivering local climate-based projects across Westminster and London. Assembly members deliberated on all of the evidence and produced a strong set of recommendations, some of which support biodiversity and making climate action the top priority when updating planning policies. It was a shame that the opposition tonight decided to abstain on hearing from a representative of the Climate Assembly who was here to share the views of residents about how we tackle the climate emergency. But I would like to highlight how the Assembly members, the value of these kind of participatory processes and how the value of and how the process changed the perception of Assembly members and how they work with the Council. So we asked residents at the start of the Assembly if they felt they understood what needed to be done to reach net zero by 2040. At the start of the Assembly, about half of the members answered positively. By the end of the Assembly, this rose to nearly 80%. We asked residents if they felt that they could influence council decision-making. At the start of the Assembly, only 39% of residents answered positively. By the end, this rose to 64%. One of the Assembly's recommendations is to review, adapt and act, continuing to involve residents in the Council's decision-making in general, but specifically around climate and ecology, means that residents will be able to continually have their say in some form on how the Council is delivering on these priorities. There will be other opportunities for us to scrutinise the recommendations further in detail, but Lord Mayor, I'd like to close by thanking the residents who took part in the Assembly. We're very grateful for their guidance, for their insight, and the insight that they will continue to bring to help us to achieve our climate and ecological ambitions. Lord Mayor, thank you, and I'm delighted to second this motion.
I now call Councillor Jim Glenn to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The importance of a healthy and biodiverse environment is widely acknowledged and beyond doubt. This is more important than any cheap party political potshots. Westminster did indeed declare a climate emergency in 2019 as a spur to action at a local level, ensuring and emphasising that environmental concerns are central to everything that the Council does, from planning and place shaping to waste and recycling. Sites of importance for nature conservation have been given weight in the planning system since before the 2007 Unitary Development Plan. All green spaces and wildlife habitats within a dense urban environment like Westminster are precious, from Pimlico Gardens to Paddington Rec and everywhere in between, and they all enjoy a great deal of protection. Sites are categorised as of local, borough or metropolitan importance. Of those 33 sites within Westminster, the only ones identified as being of London-wide significance are the Grand Union Canal, the River Thames, Regent's Park, Hyde Park, Kensington Gardens, St James's Park, Green Park and Buckingham Palace Gardens. Now, I hope you've noticed what all of those have in common. None of them are under the direct control of Westminster Council. We have 3 world-class universities located in and around Westminster: Imperial, UCL and King's, and many other excellent educational establishments. Westminster Council has always sought innovative ways to address the climate emergency, such as the smart living pillars on Ebury Street, installed in collaboration with Grosvenor and Greenwich University. But in developing an approach to tackle the universally acknowledged climate emergency, this council has not chosen to prioritise the relationship with these centres of excellence on our doorstep, but rather to ask a randomly generated set of residents for their opinions. I'm afraid I share Mr. Cole's initial scepticism. The new Climate Assembly is an interesting development, albeit I note that no members of the Conservative Party were invited to attend. 7 Labour councillors attended. We wait to see what actual change in policy or actions result from their lengthy deliberations. We support the ambition to secure the future measurable biodiversity net gains within Westminster. Again, this work was happening already and will continue across the borough, with or without this motion. I'm a trustee of the Westminster Tree Trust. Everyone loves trees. They're good for air quality, carbon capture and general health and well-being. I was first elected to council under a Conservative manifesto pledge to plant 2,000 more trees, and since then we've been planting widely and keenly across the borough, and this work continues, along with the Queen's Green Canopy and the London Plan that increases tree canopy by 10%. The real difficulty with tree planting in Westminster is not the political will or even funding. The barrier is not that residents find it difficult to propose tree planting sites. It's the availability of suitable sites. There's simply too much going on underground in most areas to allow for more successful street tree planting. Green walls and planters are no substitute for trees, as sadly their survival, and thus any environmental benefit, depends entirely upon effective maintenance and upkeep, which is sadly often neglected. But then the proposers would know this if they bothered to talk to the Westminster Tree Trust before citing them in this motion. For a group that claims to be so keen on consulting, it's rather surprising that you didn't. This motion proposes an awful lot of strategies: audits, work groups, discussions, bureaucracy and cost, without actually delivering anything or proposing anything new. As seems to be a theme developing for this administration, there's an awful lot of talk and very little action, except for the hollow virtue signalling. And that is why, unless the following speakers are remarkably persuasive, we will be abstaining from this motion.
What is the point of you?
Come on, earn your pay rise. Earn your pay rise.
I now call Councillor Gillian Arundel to speak, please.
Always abstain.
The cabinet are well remunerated.
What are you voting for again?
Gillian,
Considerably less so than you.
quiet. Let Gillian speak, please.
Recent studies have shown that Britain has lost more of its natural biodiversity than almost anywhere else in Western Europe, the most of all the G7 nations and more than many other nations. UK has been found to be consistently in the bottom 10% of nations in terms of biodiversity intactness. While Rishi Sunak today announced his government's plans to roll back on net zero carbon emission targets, this administration are actively working in the opposite direction towards securing net gains in biodiversity using a wide variety of initiatives. Biodiversity ensures that all living things, including us, are able to survive on this planet. A loss of biodiversity disrupts the essential mechanisms needed for food production, health maintenance and climate regulation. Increasing levels of biodiversity will have many important results, including a reduction in atmospheric carbon dioxide, which will reduce climate change, a reduction in coastal erosion, which will protect coastal communities. Food security is also dependent on pollination, maintenance of soil, fertility, and resistance to pests and diseases, climate maintenance, and water filtration. In terms of well-being and health, there is an immediate impact on people when they are by the sea or near bodies of water, in the mountains or walking in parks or the countryside. It is also associated with cognitive improvements, a decrease in stress, and positive social interactions and levels of happiness. It has been shown that increasing trees and green spaces in cities leads to a reduction in hospital admissions, levels of stress, and blood pressure. We already know that trees and other plants clean the air that we breathe and help us to tackle the climate change by absorbing carbon dioxide. Speaking as the air quality champion, on a recent visit to Paddington to notice almost instantly the huge difference in the air quality as compared to most of Westminster. I have a respiratory condition, which means that I'm very sensitive to the quality of air. It began shortly after I moved to Westminster 7 or 8 years ago and meant that I had to stay in my home for about 4 years. 2 years prior to COVID and 2 years during the COVID pandemic. My breathing ability improved immediately while I was in the Paddington Recreation Grounds. While I was confined to my home, I was unable to open my windows initially as my reaction to polluted air, cigarette smoke, etc. was very severe. Gradually, I started to stack my home and window ledges with leafy plants. The plants on the window ledge acted as a barrier to the polluted air coming in, and I was then able to open my windows. During the lockdowns, when there were no cars on the road, I noticed a huge improvement in the overall air quality and again was able to open my windows without any restriction. That improvement was a temporary one until cars were back on the roads, but again I stacked my window ledges with plants. For me, the most encouraging aspect of our drive to reverse the decline in net biodiversity and deliver a net gain is the involvement and contribution from the local communities. For example, the Greening Westminster programme is open to a variety of applicants, community groups, neighbourhood forums, business improvement districts, and internal council departments. Projects can be small or large scale. I am involved in a small local project in the region of £2,500 to £5,000, which is very simple and easily replicated in other neighbourhoods. This project will contribute to the well-being of local residents as well as improving the quality of air over the long term. Small and large projects can make a difference and provide an overall impact on reducing atmospheric carbon dioxide and reducing climate change. Glyphosate, I hope I said that correctly, glyphosate, had a terrible impact on the natural environment and wildlife, and the banning of its use in Westminster has been a huge step in increasing overall biodiversity. The No Mow May initiative developed by Plantlife is another great strategy aimed at restoring the diversity of wild plants and fungi and recognising their importance to human health. The Wild Gardens competition to encourage nature-based gardening for locals and other initiatives are all contributing in their own way to the overall objective. With the proposed declaration of an ecological emergency, it is great to see that this is finally being taken seriously. It has already been heartwarming to see the range of initiatives undertaken in such a short period of time, and which includes the diverse elements of our communities.
Thank you, Councillor. I now call Councillor Matt Noble to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And as Ryan was saying, it was particularly appropriate to debating this subject 4 years after the climate emergency was declared in this chamber. And other people have mentioned it, but given the Prime Minister's announcements this afternoon, which are deeply disappointing, very unhelpful to both businesses and consumers, it's important that we continue to listen to what our residents are saying and not rubbish their involvement in climate assemblies. What our residents want is more action, including from central government. And so when so much is dependent on the actions of businesses and individuals outside of the direct control of all local authorities, policies which put in jeopardy the levels of investment required to reach our goals is evidently damaging and has been done entirely to try and shore up steadily falling polling numbers for the Conservatives nationally. I know many, if not most, of the members opposite don't support this afternoon's policy shift. policy shift, and so I would invite them to stand with us in lobbying to oppose these changes. This leads me... Well, we're going to stop talking about Sadiq Khan all the time, I guess. This leads me neatly into one of the recommendations of the Climate Assembly, and I'd like to thank Simon, who is here tonight, as well as all the other Climate Assembly members, and as Cara was saying, thanking the Climate Action Team for coming along too. There's recognition that the climate crisis is too important to be allowed to become a wedge issue for political parties. Equally, the ongoing collaboration and consultation with the people who live here. In the time I have, I can't do justice to the energy, thought and feeling that the Assembly participants put into all of their recommendations, but I know I speak on behalf of the councillors and officers who are involved when I say that what came from the process is of huge worth to us and will greatly assist in our Climate Emergency Action Plan update later this year. And in addition to more on improvements to biodiversity, and rather than announcing scrapping measures no one was seriously suggesting, like meat taxes or 7 bins, what we listened to at the Assembly and what we'll continue to listen to were areas where more collaboration is required between the council, businesses and communities, and opportunities to incentivise the faster decarbonisation of commercial and residential properties, which is why, again, it's so disappointing that the government have decided to scrap the energy efficiency standards in rented properties. The Assembly sessions on the questions we set are done for now, but this is a group whose enthusiasm we'll continue to harness and use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I now call Councillor Jude to reply, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for everyone who's spoken on this motion tonight. I've just been frantically rewriting my speech as I started by thanking Councillor Glenn for being a sustainability advocate and for ensuring that such issues were above party politics, as Labour did when we sat over there 4 years ago. I wrote that as I did not expect you to say what you just said. I'm genuinely shocked. So I even had a little joke in there about how this is something you might not abstain on, but you've already said you will. Issues such as this should be above party politics. I'm really, really disappointed, actually, that they aren't. I'm a bit angry, actually. I'm sure for Councillor Glenn to speak so passionately about what's happening in Westminster that he's read the many ecological emergency action plans that councils across this country have, including many of our neighbouring boroughs. I have read them. I know the relative lack of action that's been committed to previously in this council and under the previous administration. I'm not criticising. I didn't want to criticise you for that. I want us to take a step forward together, but you don't want to be going down that path with us. Some specific points. The government itself agrees that we need to take this seriously, as the Biodiversity Duty in the Environment Act of 2021 explicitly says that local authorities have to take this seriously and have to look at how they can increase their local biodiversity. Things that other councils are doing that we're not. Monitoring, data. The Biodiversity and Open Spaces strategy that you had in 2019 committed to having regular monitoring and regular audits. Where are they? They haven't happened. That's why we're having to do one now, so we can form our baseline. So we can form our baseline.
Yeah, we've been
So we can form our baseline.
2019.
16 months of inaction.
So we can form a baseline. On trees, it's great that you mentioned your failed trees manifesto policy. You planted 327 in the most recently available data. 327. Effective maintenance. I'm happy that you bring this up. Under biodiversity net gain, 30-year mandatory maintenance plans are coming in. Again, if you were following the policies, you would know this is coming in.
Oh, it's going to come in sometime, is it?
And again, you've mentioned the fact that there's a lot of admin in this motion. Well, of course there is. How can we make a strategy without having the data to underpin it, without being able to set out what we're going to do, to be able to develop detailed action plans like so many other councils in this country have on biodiversity? So, if this motion does pass, as we have set out, the next steps involve, firstly, the green infrastructure audit, to form that baseline, to understand where we are, to understand what we need to improve from. The Government's Environment Act says we'll only improve from the level we get to in 2030. We're going to do the audit now, so we can improve from now and not allow decline over the next few years. Off the back of that, we'll bring together what we've done over the last year into a formal strategy which will inform the action plan that has never existed before. You can joke around about it, but this stuff is serious. It's really serious. And I'm glad that you point out that we don't own all the land in Westminster. Of course we don't. That's why our motion says we'll work in partnership with other local stakeholders to bring this forward. There are partnerships that already exist for biodiversity in Westminster that you were not part of. We will become part of them very, very shortly. We also acknowledge in this motion where the limits of local action get to. And that's why we'll be also setting out our intention, we will be declaring our support for the Climate and Ecology Bill. I'm really, really happy to be able to say we're going to do that, because it talks about ensuring the government also understands that climate and ecology are intertwined. I'm not criticising the government for this, Councillor Devenish. This is a cross-party bill, supported by MPs from every single colour and councils from every single colour. The same way, I hope this motion tonight will be supported by every party in this room. So I was going to end with a few more serious questions. It's already been a bit of a serious speech in the end, but let me do it anyway. I was going to pose to all of you guys that in the future, when our children come to us, ask us how we help to stop these intertwined crises, when we knew what the science was saying, when we had the power to make a decision, what did we do? We know what you're about to do. When our grandchildren ask us about green spaces, about butterflies, birds and beetles in Westminster, we want them to ask us that because of a species they've just seen with their own eyes, or because they've read about it in a book of what we used to have in Westminster. Without action, the latter is what will happen. We are in power to be able to make a difference. I know why I ran. I know the issues that I take seriously. I am proud to put this motion forward. I'm disappointed you won't be supporting it. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
We now vote on motion 13B, ecological emergency, by a show of hands. Those in favour?
Any brave soul, go on. Come on.
Those against? Thank you. Those against?
Tony, what do you care about?
Those against? Abstentions?
Just vote against. Cowards.
Some of them can't even be bothered to abstain.
I declare...
That back row, none of them put their hand up to abstain.
I declare...
None of them.
Can I declare, please, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Agenda items 11 and 12, reports for full council. As one of the reports listed on the agenda has already been voted on earlier this evening, we have only one report to vote on in this item. We will now vote on the recommendations of the report for full council entitled Parental Leave Policy. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded by a show of hands. Can I ask those in favour?
They can vote for things, you see.
Those against? Okay. Those abstaining? I declare the recommendations are agreed. Thank you so much, everyone, and that concludes the council meeting. Thank you and good night. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I think I heard a comment there. A third of their members are off tonight. This is about parental leave, so not time off.
Was that?
Clarification. I heard it. Yeah, I think it was it Mr. Devenish? Councillor Devenish, was it you?
Yeah, yeah, okay. Thank you.